Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So we said tonight that we would talk about the koan, the Everyday Koan. For those who don't know what koan is, a koan is a kind of an enigmatic riddle or saying of some kind that reveals an aspect of the Dharma that tells us, also gives insight into those who would solve the puzzle, their insight into the Dharma and their sense of deep awakening. And so Dōgen Zenji used about 300 different koans in his teaching, but he didn't use them in the way that the Rinzai practitioners do. In the Rinzai tradition, it's very important that one have an awakening experience. So they will sit with a particular koan of some kind. The teacher gives them a koan, and they will sit with that in earnest until they have a breakthrough and they're able to see through the koan itself and have an awakening experience. Dōgen Zenji used those very different way, and he used them more in a sense of parables, as teaching stories. And as I say, about 300 he used, even though there are something like 12 or 1,500 different koans. The first two koans are the most important. From the first two are all the others, various kinds of angles around the first two koans. And the first koan is referred to as koan mu. A monk asked Joshu, does a dog have Buddha nature? Joshu answered mu. That's the koan. And so one must understand or come to understand the meaning of that koan and have a no breakthrough. Essentially, mu means no. It also means emptiness. So Dogen did not use that in the way that Rinzai sit there with that intensity, trying to create an intensity, and then they go into the Dokusan room and moo. You hear them saying that to try and show their understanding. Moo. And it can be very funny if you're outside the Dokusan room listening to this. It sounds like cows inside the Dokusan room, but it's very serious practice, very intense practice. So the second koan is longer. It's a much longer story, and it's about this. So the practitioners were practicing, and a man came in, and when the temple master was leaving we'll call it the zendo, this man came up to him and said, "Can you please help me, sir, master? I had an experience 500 years ago, and I was turned into a fox, and I need you to help me with this." So to clear that up, in Chinese literature, a fox is a shapeshifter and can shape into any kind of person or animal or what have you. So it goes then with that kind of understanding. So he says, "I was turned into a fox and I need help." He said, "What happened to me was that a very cultured man came to me and he asked me, are cultured people subject to causality?" And I said to him, "Yes, they are." And immediately I was turned into a fox. And I have spent 500 years as a fox, and I need to ask you, is it true that if a cultured person, is a cultured person subject to causality? And the temple master answered, "They are not blind to causality." And immediately the man was released from being a fox. But he asked the priest to please have a funeral for the fox. So the temple master gathered the monks together, and he took them out into the field, and they discovered a body of a fox. And so they brought the fox back, and they cremated the fox. And so that is the koan. We are subject to causality. And so what we do in the world matters. What happens in the world matters. What we choose to do matters, because it's all cause and effect in this world that we are in. And for my thinking, I feel Americans should have that as the first one, because we can be very arrogant and individualistic in our practice. And if we have a breakthrough in koan mu, it's not like it lasts forever, but one can think that they have accomplished something and think that they can do anything, that they are not subject to causality. We should know that we are subject to causality and not flaunt any kind of awakening or run around talking about our awakening experiences. We just don't do that. And then all of the other koans, even the 1200, have another kind of metaphor related to them. So if you understand the first two, if you go through those first two koans, you've got it. You're okay. You'll be fine from there on. So the koan that Dōgen Zenji feels that is the most important to us in Soto Zen is the everyday koan. How should I live? What should I do with my life? And ultimately we come to this question, how, not what or why or when or anything like that, but how. It's kind of the final question. How shall I live? How do I choose what to do in this life? And the koan, the basic koan is, what do you do when you stand up off the cushion? When you get up off the cushion, what do you do? How do you live, I should say? It's easy to sit zazen. It's really difficult to get up and live and to do other things. You know, those of you who sat in pews and sang hymns know that it's all cool while you're in church, and it's out in the parking lot where all the stress happens, where all of the angst of who goes first and the filing to get out of the parking lot. So we have the same kind of thing here. What is next? What happens when we go out and we get in our car and we drive away and we go home? How are we then? This is another koan that I think is a little bit related to this. And I really like this koan personally. I like the story. I like the intention of it. So this monk, Ruiyan, his name was, Ruiyan, hard to say. It's a kind of a Chinese name. He would get up every morning and he would say, Ruiyan, and he would answer to himself, yes. And then he would say, be alert, be awake, be alert. And he would answer, yes. And from now on, do not be fooled by anyone. Yes, yes. And that's a koan, but it's a great story. And I think it relates to our intentions in life and what we do when we get off the cushion. What are we fooled by in this life? What are we, in our own mind? I mean, in that koan, Ryuyen is, difficulty with his name, Ryuyen is speaking to himself also, saying, how shall I live? How shall I live? Do not be fooled by anyone. Don't be fooled by oneself, is what he is saying. Don't be fooled by our own selves. don't wander into some kind of fantasy in this life. Hold ourselves, as we were talking about last Saturday in the text that we are reading. What is our comportment in this life? The comportment of how we sit, how we stand, how we walk, how we lie down. What is our comportment? And when we hold that comportment of practice, we have a better chance of making wise choices, of living with a little bit more clarity, a little bit more awakened mind, a little bit more touching our authentic self. I don't think for a minute that this is easy. And I don't think that it stops at any time throughout life. I think it is a lifelong challenge, such a koan. Good, every day we make mistakes. Every day, I think Dōgen Zenji said that every day, another mistake. We all do. I mean, we are human, which doesn't exactly excuse us from choosing the best we can. But when we do make a choice of something that's not so wise, we see it immediately. If we are deep in practice, karma comes straight at you just like that. You don't get a big space of, oh, maybe next week it will show up. It happens just like that. So it's not easy to be alert, be awake, and to not be fooled by anyone. Very difficult. And these days we are so tired of the environment we are in. Even if we are being alert and being awake and holding good comportment, we are mixing in this world with everyone. And right now, things are not so stable for us. And for those of you who might have listened to Cory Booker yesterday, which is not a political issue, he was saying, this is not a political matter, this is a moral issue. And we are all dealing with how do we respond to a country with such abundance, and yet we are saying we cannot feed those who are hungry, or that we are not going to anymore feed those who are hungry when we were just a few months ago. How do we respond? How do we deal with this in ways that are useful and appropriate? So we are not in easy times with this koan, and yet it's lifelong. We've all been doing it from the moment we sat on the cushion. Even before we sat on a cushion, we were doing everyday koan. It didn't take sitting zazen to have that problem of how do I live this life. But we perhaps articulate it now that we sit zazen and we realize the preciousness of this life and the preciousness of each moment that can be taken away from us just like that. So Cory Booker was very clear in this. I am not speaking politically. I am speaking morally. This is a moral moment for us in this country, and we are so deeply challenged. So not only are we challenged in, how shall we respond? What do we do? What do we do? We're challenged to remain stable, to remain alert and awake in the midst of all of the chaos that is thrown at us right now. To remain balanced and understand that we do find that in Zazen. And it's the balance from Zazen that we take when we stand up and we begin to walk in the same comportment of Zazen, the same comportment of sitting down, standing, and walking, and lying down, because sleep is also an aspect of practice. Even though for many of us, it's hard to find right these days. There's another temple in Los Gatos that was and put out a request for support because they need to rebuild the road, which is a horrible road. It's full of big potholes and so forth, and they need to rebuild it to support the cars that come into their temple. And they were talking about how long does it take to make a temple, to really root a temple. And it's my first teacher, Koban Roshi, who said 500 years. It takes 500 years to root a temple. And we took that up when we started here. We took up the 500-year plan of, we will be here for 500 years. So this year we only have 475 to go. Nothing. So we are in such infancy of awareness and enabled with no idea, have no idea. I think Dōgen Zenji took up a discussion in Shobogenzo about past lives that came after that koan discussion, I think he did, of that koan discussion about the fox, the man who was a fox for 500 years. And he said that, yes, of course, there are people who have memory, for a few people here and there have memory of their past lives. He was of the opinion, though, that those were bad people remembering their past ills in life, and now they had the opportunity to, repair from the conflicts that they carried over those years. But he said, but it doesn't matter. He said, it does you no particular good to think about whether you have past lives or not. He says, it doesn't matter. This life now that we are in, that we are called to work with, that we are called to try and make possible for others, is where we are. And we are all that we have been. And that is what we take when we stand off the cushion and when we sit on the cushion, when we sit zazen. But all that we are, everything that we have learned is useful to us. Every single thing. And as you've heard me say before, every single person in the world has one thing to teach you and me. The people we don't like at all, the people who annoy us the most, have something to teach us. And all of that is useful when we try and figure out what's next. What do we do? What do I do now that I've gotten off the cushion and I face into this world that has become so difficult and in many ways just this country distasteful? To think of how we are responding to the suffering world outside us when we have such abundance. So indeed, it is a deep koan, difficult, and it comes to us every day. And I think Dōgen was a profound spiritual teacher in that we can never walk away from practice. It embodies us. It ultimately is internalized. All of our chanting becomes internalized. I can't walk down the street without chanting Hanya Shingyo anymore, or any of the chants that we do. They just go through me with every step. And that is what's supposed to happen to us, that we completely internalize the tradition, the practice, the sutras, the wisdom of this practice. So we can walk with, if we are walking Hanya Shingyo into the perfection of wisdom, if we are walking those, my goodness, we're okay. We really are okay if we can do that. And in many ways, if we are walking, which happens to me, kanjis, aibos, with every step, I'm also giving that out to the world. Something is radiating out of the body in that walking, in that comportment. So none of it is lost. We are in difficult times, but we have tremendous strength that we take from Zazen, that we take when we stand up, that we take from the standing Zazen, walking Zazen, lying down, sleeping Zazen. We have great strength given to us in the wisdom of this practice. I know it's so easy to doubt it, but courage, please, courage and fearlessness. You're fearless. We have a new altar that will be put up in June, and the new Buddha that is coming is the posture of fearlessness. So it's so strong and so powerful. Yeah.
This mudra?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's very wonderful. Which we ourselves can hold, It isn't that we can't hold those mudras. I have certainly held mudras lying in bed. If I can't sleep, hold a mudra. Hold this mudra of fearlessness. It's so powerful to hold. Or such. Almost any way you hold your hands is a mudra. There's no way, actually, that you hold your hands that is not a mudra, except maybe a few things that we won't mention. So maybe
my
that's
imagination running.
Yeah, that's the one hand clapping. But almost any way, and it's very powerful to just hold this. There's just because we see Buddha statues doing it doesn't mean that we can't do that. That we are already imitating the Buddha when we sit zazen. We're already imitating the Buddha in bowing and everything that we do. So if you can't sleep, hold a mudra of fearlessness. Very, very strong. Yep. Very strong. or this, or this, or, you know. But we are fearless. We are fearless. So